Melinda Cherubini, and I am the chair. And we will begin the meeting with our administrative assistant, Jessica Payne, who will call the roll.
I don't have it in front of me, so pardon me if I mess up anybody's names. So,
Okay.
Board Member Cherubini,
Present.
Board Member Pardo,
Present.
Board Member Novello,
Present.
Board Member Torres. Okay, so we can't see him, but we assume he's here.
Yes.
Great.
You want to let him know he's on mute.
I don't do that.
Board Member Torres, you are on mute.
He's there, so keep going.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'd like to introduce the staff and our independent police auditor, City Manager Miles Slatterly is there. Welcome, Miles. And Captain Brian Stevens is in the audience. Will be making a presentation later. And for those that haven't met Shannon Fazio is our administrative assistant. Wave your hand, Shannon. That's her. So she has joined the team. So if you have any administrative assistant type questions, she'll be happy to answer those. And our independent police auditor, Michael Janako, correct me. It's Janako, isn't it? He is about to say something. Okay. There he is. Hi, Michael. Did I mispronounce your last name again? Okay. Well, that's okay. He can correct me later. All right. Would you please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You can be seated. Now, it is with a great deal of pleasure that I have the honor to administer the oath of office to our newest member of our board, and that would be Kimberly Wiley. So, Kimberly, why don't you come up here in front of the camera and the microphone. People can hear me here. Okay, want to set your stuff down right there? Okay, oath of office for the city of Eureka. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kimberly Wiley, do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California and the Charter of the City of Eureka. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter in the capacity of board member for the Citizens Oversight on Police Practices Board of the City of Eureka. Great. Thank you. Congratulations. We just need you to sign that and give it to Shannon.
A quick test. Can the Zoom members hear us now? Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah. And then you can come up here and sit with us on the board. It's our new board member.
Quick test. Zoom members, can you hear us? Yay.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we won't start over, but at least we know. We know you heard us. All right. So next up is the approval of the minutes of the May 24th, 2022 COPP meeting. I'm sure the board members have had an opportunity to review the minutes. And are there any corrections to those minutes? Well, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, second?
And I'll second.
Okay. Moved by Dr. Pardo and seconded by Dino. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So next up is public comment. I see we have some members on Zoom and in the audience. So this is the time, this is the time for the members of the public to comment on items not listed on the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. The public will be allowed to speak concurrently with the calling of an agenda item following the staff presentation of that item. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the COPP may not take action on any item that does not appear on the agenda. So, are there any members in the board chambers that would like to address the board for public comment? No. Do we have any members on Zoom members of the public on Zoom that would like to address? Are we asking them to raise their hand? Is that how they, okay. If you do have any comments, then you could raise your hand. I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much. We will move on to the business portion of our meeting. Alrighty, we don't have any old business today. And just to make a correction here, on item I under new business, city-owned cameras, we're going to be discussing that in a presentation under item K, under staff reports. So there'll be a presentation on the city-owned security camera new policy and procedure adopted by the city a little bit later. So let's move on to bylaws. So everyone has received a copy of the bylaws, the draft bylaws that staff has prepared. And at our last meeting, we appointed Marcus Drum and Raul Torres to be on a subcommittee to review those, but I don't believe you've had time to review those before Marcus resigned. Is that correct, Raul?
I did read them, but I didn't get a chance to talk to Marcus about it before he resigned.
Okay. Well, we put this on the agenda for the full board to discuss today. So if you have any comments about the draft bylaws, we could start off with you if you'd like.
From what I read, I was perfectly satisfied with what I read. I thought they were very detailed and very encompassing of a lot of information. So I thought they were good.
Okay. Any other comments by other board members?
Yes, Chairperson, I do have a comment. Section 3, in our previous bylaws, I don't know if they were called the bylaws at that time, it says a resident of the city, but also there was a wording that said if there was a specific tie to the city. Dr. Merriweather, I'm not sure whether he lived in Eureka or not, but he had a tie to the city with HSU, Humboldt State, and its connections here. So I think in Section 3, it would be important to maintain that wording that allows us to have someone on the board who has a very specific tie. And certainly Humboldt State, I'd like to see someone from Humboldt, replace Dr. Merriweather because I thought they brought a great perspective. He brought a great perspective. So I wanted to bring that up to the board for discussion.
Any comments by anybody? Well, I think that's a great idea because I believe the city's description, our city clerk is going to tell us what the sphere of influence is.
Correct.
Okay.
Per the EMC, which is what actually talks about how someone in the public can be a member of a board or commission, they need to live in the city of Eureka or in the Humboldt Community Services District, which is the greater Eureka area, or they must own a business in the city of Eureka, and that's the tie to the city. So that is what the EMC dictates, and that's how all of you all are chosen. So I'm not sure why it was mentioned in the bylaws, but maybe just as a reference to the EMC.
Okay. Dr. Pardo?
And
Oh, go ahead, City
I'm
Manager.
I'm sorry. And I'm not sure, when Dr. Merriweather was assigned, I don't know if this was going by our updated, basically when we made the advisory board a part of our ordinance and made it a part of, the public meeting process. He may have been appointed prior to that. Either that or he was appointed during that time, and he did live in the sphere of influence of the city of Eureka in the HCSD area.
I do believe he was appointed prior to the Chiefs Advisory Board coming on to as an ordinance and prior to it being part of the EMC. So he was allowed to stay on, and I think we had one other member that accommodation was made for because they were absorbed into the system.
Okay. That explains that.
Dan, before you leave, a clarification. So if you own a business in the city but don't necessarily live in the city, then that would qualify, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from board members?
Another question.
Okay.
In regard to our independent IPA, this is more a how are we going to do it? It says Article 2, Section 1A, evaluate the work of the independent IPA. And I'd be interested to hear from our independent police auditor how best that will work in process so that we can evaluate his work.
Okay. Michael, did you want to respond to that?
Sure. This provision. Hello, everyone. Michael Janako here, the independent police auditor. And unfortunately, we missed, I think, the early part of the meeting when we were supposed to introduce ourselves. I have two of my colleagues, the brain trust of IPA here on the call. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Julie Rulin and Teresa Magula, who you see remotely. And we look forward to working with you. But to address the particular question, it's a not unusual provision where the community-based group that we are working with provides input into how we're doing. And that can be accomplished in a lot of different ways, and be happy to talk with the chair offline about, maybe the best way to come up with an assessment tool, but we can certainly work on that. And we have some ideas that we think have worked in other jurisdictions. So I'd be happy to to address that in some offline conversations, if that might be the most effective way of doing that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I had a couple comments as well with regard to the IPA. This is Article 6 under Staff, Section 1. The last sentence here that says the IPA will take reasonable steps to ensure the board is kept fully informed about all major police issues that may be of concern to the community in accordance with the city oversight ordinance. And again, that is sort of a how. How is that going to get accomplished?
Sure. And to answer that question, I probably will ask my colleague Teresa Magula just to talk about how we're going to be notified of critical incidents, and then I'll take it from there on how we might best notify this group. Teresa?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And hello, I'm Teresa Magula. It's
Hello.
a pleasure to be with you virtually today. We had a series of meetings with the department leadership, and they have provided for us a critical incident notification via text message. So immediately upon a critical incident occurring, our team will receive a series of text messages with information about that critical incident as the information is available. And shortly thereafter, once someone from leadership is able to communicate with us directly, we will have a phone call to further detail the incident itself and any concerns that might be stemming from that incident. So we will be in real time receiving information from the department directly, and then receiving more kind of robust information as, you know, within a 24-hour window, we imagine.
Okay.
And with that information, we will then figure out the best way to facilitate that information flow to the group. Obviously, if you're not meeting as regularly as every day, and you're not, we'll have to figure out a way to get you this information in between meetings. We can then use the meetings themselves to update you on any updates with regard to the critical incident as the investigation proceeds. But that is our suggestion as to how we do it. We actually got our first text message today, but it was a test, so we didn't have to worry about anything. And the test showed that it worked. I got my text and replied to the captain. So I hope that answers your question, but I do think we can find a way to facilitate information to you. What we do in Anaheim is something very similar. In Anaheim, we get notified immediately of an in-custody death, officer-involved shooting, or other critical incident. And then we work with the Office of City Manager to provide at least some preliminary information to the Community-Based Review Board about what has occurred, so that to the degree we can continue to update you on what's going on, we want you all to be timely informed of anything that's happening in your city involving police involvement in a critical incident.
And may I ask, how does that information get transmitted to the Oversight Committee? Is it also by text?
I'm not sure text would be the most effective way of doing that, unless you all are willing to share cell phone information with us, but we could do it that way, or alternatively, we could figure out a way to communicate, through email or other ways of facilitating communications. We'll just have to figure out the best and most effective way to do that.
And this would only be information that is not personnel related or name public. It would only be public information at that point. Any information that might be released to the news media, perhaps.
Correct, but depending on how that information is released to the news media, I think ideally we'd want that information to be provided to the cop before any general news release went out. So we'll have to coordinate that with the city, but we'll figure out a best way to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Dino?
Yes, my question is, so just looking at the timeline process, it sounds like there's a text message that would go out. We would get notified of the situation of what happened. Where does that, and I don't know to who to ask this question to, is when does it get back to where we need to confer and we need to talk about the specific related situation? Do one of us call a meeting to discuss a situation, or do we wait for our quarterly meetings? I just don't know what would be the process following what you just described there.
Of course, I can try to take that on, but certainly I'm not intending to dominate this conversation. But based on experience and based on the current law, there's a few things. One is that under some of the new transparency laws, many critical incidents are subject to other kinds of disclosure, and this is a recent phenomenon. But for example, if there's an officer-involved shooting or in custody death, and there's video evidence like body-worn camera video or other video that captures the incident, there's a requirement under state law to release that information with a certain amount of time, a couple months. And so that is going to be going on. But with regard to the investigation itself, these investigations do not complete overnight. They take a good long time generally to complete. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is because of the seriousness of the incident, but two, there needs to be coordination with other entities that are going to be responsible for pieces of the investigation. So for example, if it's an officer-involved shooting and it's a fatality, the autopsy report that's conducted, the toxicological report that's conducted by the coroner's office, all that information needs to be gathered by the detectives who are conducting the investigation. And then eventually that investigation is submitted to the district attorney for review. Then there's an internal review that's conducted by Eureka PD with regard to adherence to policy. So there's a lot of moving pieces. But at the end of the investigation, if it is a incident that qualifies under the new transparency law, all those investigative reports will be eventually made public because the law requires that. Along the way, our plan would be to continue to advise you on the progress of those investigations, where the department is, where the case is, whether it's with the district attorney, whether it's still waiting for toxicological reports or whatever, but we'll at least be able to procedurally advise you on where the investigation is as matters unfold. And so I don't know that will be necessary. Of course, there's always the option for you all to do that if there's a will. I don't know that it'd be necessary as a matter of routine to have a special meeting just to discuss a particular critical incident. That could vary and could depend a lot on, what the initial information is, but certainly there is the ability to have special meetings, although I'm not sure they'll be necessary on every case.
Okay, anything else?
No, thank you for answering that. Thank you.
Okay, a couple other questions. So when you do bring back that information, would that be considered a closed session item? Is that when we would adjourn here and go into closed session, discuss it, and then come back out, or is that open to the public?
I'm going to give a lawyer answer, which is it depends, because it kind of does depend. So if the case is still an ongoing investigation and it's not completed, then that information would not be available to the public. So there may be a need for ongoing investigations if the committee believes that they want to have a more specific briefing about ongoing matters. then there may be a need to go into closed session. But eventually, as I indicated, when the investigation is complete, when the DA's made his or her decision, and when the internal review is done by the department, all this information would then become available, not only to you all, but to the general public.
Okay, thank you. I think I had one more question. Nope, answered that. Oh yeah, and this would be for you and as well as the city manager. So in what article is that? Article 5, meetings, voting, and procedures, Section 6. It says that an agenda committee consisting of the chair, the IPAS, and the city manager will establish the meeting agenda. And in other places it references that agenda items have to be completed 10 days prior to meet the public notice, so they can be prepared and meet the public notice period. But how do you see that happening and the timing to that with regards to our scheduled meeting?
So I can take that one since Michael's been dominating this whole thing. So, and it's similar to what we've been doing now, Chair Bellini. I would say that, discussions with, Michael's been in discussions with the chief. He's been in discussions with me. Issues may come up during those discussions, and then that can be had with you, myself, and Michael. Or, as is the case with this one, you requested certain things to be on the agenda, and then we have those discussions, and then it ends up going to Shannon, and Shannon puts the agenda together. I don't think it needs to be formal to where we need to have a certain meeting prior to 10 days. That 10 days is not end all be all. I think that it's, Pam will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 72 hours that we need to do the public notice for the agenda. So that 10,
yeah, she's nodding, that's correct.
Yeah, it's just to give us a buffer. Unless we have an emergency meeting, I think we can get away with 24. But it's 72 hours, and that tends just to be conservative and make sure that we can get our stuff in line prior to that 72-hour period.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other questions from board members on the bylaws? Are there any members of the public that would like to chime in on the draft bylaws? No, seeing no hands raised. Then what is the pleasure of the board? Would you like to make a motion to approve the bylaws as is with the corrections that we've suggested? Or would you like to see the bylaws come back and completed at our next meeting for adoption? Or Raul's the only subcommittee member. So I guess we could appoint another subcommittee to review it if you think it requires further auditing here. Go ahead. Go ahead, Miles, Mr. City Manager.
So I just hadn't heard any. It seemed to me that most of the input was clarifications more so than any changes. So I don't know if there's anything that I heard that was requesting to be changed as a part of the bylaws. I may have missed something.
The only request for change I had was the Section 3A to make it more specific, as Pam said, for the three different, the resident, the greater area, or a business owner.
Correct. I would just refer it back to the EMC for the details that would govern it.
But otherwise, I'm comfortable making a motion with the change to move the bylaws forward for approval.
Can I get a clarification real quick? Just that you're checking to make sure that nobody wanted to say anything was our public hearing, so we could say it was opened and closed because nobody had any comment.
I did.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion to
We already have a motion.
Oh, sorry.
If
Well, I second it.
you could second it. Yeah, okay, great.
I won't have to say what I was going to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that we adopt the draft bylaws with the recommendation from Dr. Pardo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great. The motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Globally, I don't know who all was responsible, but you did a great job there. Thank you very much. All right. Next up is Marcus and Jason's resignation. So I wanted to put an item on the agenda to recognize the work that both board member Drum and Dr. Merriweather put in during their time on the board. Let me get to that here. So, yes, since the last board meeting, both Marcus Drum and Dr. Jason Merriweather have resigned. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to publicly thank Marcus and Jason for their service on this board and on the previous Chiefs Advisory Board and to the City of Eureka. And I also want to add that Marcus also served as a member of the Chiefs Advisory Panel, which this has come a long way from the inception of public input into the police department. And he was one of the founding members that was formed by Chief Andy Mills at the time and then continued under Chief Steve Watson. So Marcus was a great asset to this board with his extensive experience serving on other business and government boards. He was a former member of the finance officer for the Humboldt Mediation and the former general manager of the Lolita Community Services District. His perspective from his legal background and experience was an invaluable addition to our discussions and very much appreciated. And Marcus did send in a letter of resignation by email that I'm not sure got distributed to everybody, but he had some thoughtful comments, and I just wanted to read it for the record. Marcus says, I am writing to you today to inform you that I will no longer be able to perform my duties as a public representative on the COPP. I have been offered an opportunity to work in partnership with Native communities in northern Nevada on clean water and safe drinking water, and will be relocating to better integrate myself into the local scene. The efforts of the Chief Advisory Panel were in support of a vision that the Eureka Police Department both serves and is served by our residents and the government, and that the EPD is recognized for their valuable service within Eureka and also within the larger county community. I wish the best for the work of the COPP as it moves forward toward a more formal oversight role. The panel, committee members I have served with, both past and present, have universally thought the best interests of our community and of the police department, and I will always have my respect. Finally, I'd like to express my appreciation to the City Council and to the Eureka Police Department for the opportunity to represent Eureka residents in these important efforts. Signed, Marcus Drum. And Jason Merriweather, Dr. Jason Merriweather, he joined our board during Chief Watson's tenure. As a vice president of Cal Poly Humboldt, Dr. Merriweather's participation on our board brought a unique perspective that included the students and campus community. His meaningful and insightful input to our discussions was much appreciated. Dr. Merriweather has accepted a new job as a vice president of a university in Kentucky, where he and his family are from. In Dr. Merriweather's resignation email, he stated, quote, "This group has been important to me, and the work we have done in the last few years has been meaningful to our community. I am truly grateful for the thoughtful nature of our discussions and appreciate the collegiality and collaborative nature of our work together," unquote. So thank you again, Marcus and Jason. We will miss you, and we wish you the best in your new endeavors. Okay? Okay. Now we have a new member, Kimberly. So welcome. You have some big shoes to fill there.
Thank you.
No, we look forward to your participation. Okay, next up is the election of a new vice chair. Marcus Drum was our vice chair. So as stated in our new bylaws, we must elect a new vice chair. So are there any nominations from board members for vice chair?
I don't know if Dino's interested, but I would nominate Dino Novello as vice chair.
I was just about to say that.
I was about to nominate you, Dr. Pardo, but you beat me to it.
Beat you to the punch there.
Yeah. Would you accept the nomination, Dino?
If I hear that two people would like me to be, that I was nominated by two people, I will accept.
I second the nomination.
Okay, 3 people.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's see. We need to have that in the form of a motion. Dr. Pardo, since you...
I'll make a motion for Dino Novello to serve as our vice chair of the Community Oversight on Policing Practices.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Great. All right. All those in favor of Dino Novello as our new vice chair, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Congratulations, Dino.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for serving. Yeah, just don't spend that paycheck in any one place. All right, moving on to board members' reports. This is a time for board members, if they'd like to make a comment on any new thing or any experience they've had relative to our work here on the board, are welcome to do so. So anybody have any comments or anything they'd like to say? Dr. Pardo.
Thank you. I have 3 comments I would like to make as part of our board report section. First off, there was a multi-agency pursuit in the city I think we all heard about. It ended up just outside my medical office. The next morning, I went there and there was crime scene tape across our office. And my manager called the police department, and police officer Jansen, I believe, was the officer, came out. He apologized for the crime scene tape being left behind, and he cleaned it up himself. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. Certainly after a very stressful situation that all those officers were in, the police officer Jansen did not need to take that approach. And so my office manager was very grateful and wanted me to acknowledge him for that service that he did. The second item I wanted to talk about is I did my medical training up in Portland. That was for my plastic surgery training. At the time, there really was not much gun violence up in Portland. In the last 2-3 years, it's changed dramatically. I was watching a YouTube video of their community oversight board over. They have a focused intervention team who is trying to focus on the gun violence, and the board asked specifically the 2 officers, what's the biggest challenge? And both of them, without hesitation, said staffing. And I know we're getting a staffing report later, and I'm sure it's going to show the same struggles here in Eureka, but it just shows you that staffing of these police departments, I think, is a critical issue. I think with the low staffing, we're much more likely to get incidences that come to the board like ours and like theirs, because I think we're going to find our officers are going to be in much higher risk situations with low staffing. So I do think we need to continue focus on staffing. The example they gave was they have 6 detectives in Portland currently who are trying to manage what looks like it's going to be 1,400 shootings this year, and there's just no way they can manage that. So I don't see the chief, so I assume Captain Stevens will give us the staffing report. But I'll be interested to see where we are this meeting. The last comment is in regards to our two departing board members. As Melinda Chairman Cerabellini said, it's going to be very hard to replace those two. They did. We're very committed. To our city manager, a couple comments. I think Humboldt State, Dr. Merriweather brought a real unique perspective to the board. I don't know if we have an opportunity for someone from Humboldt State or have them at least involved once a year, because I think that's really important that we're have that input from Humboldt State regarding the state of policing in Humboldt County. The other was that Marcus Drum brought that legal perspective. I think that's important. Kimberly, excuse me, I don't know your background, and maybe you could give us an update too. But I think that we do need that legal perspective on the board, and I'd be interested to hear from the city manager. We have 5 on the board currently. Is there a thought that the council and the city manager wants to go to 7? Those are my public board comments today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I can answer that the question about the number of board members. So yeah, we do intend to go to 7. Right now, we have put out a press release letting people know that there is 2 more vacancies still, and I think there's some potential interested parties that we've provided information to. We've also been sending the agendas and the bylaws and updates like that to the community-based organizations that we discussed previously, and so we do have every intention on getting 2 more board members in to have a full 7. I don't believe we've gotten an application, but I know that there's been expressed interest from community members to join the board. As far as the types of backgrounds that we're looking for and stuff like that, obviously we want to be reflective of the community and have the diversity that we're looking for. Other than that, as far as professions, if there's somebody that you think would be a good fit, I would encourage you to reach out to them and try and reach them. Once the board did go as a part of our municipal code, it does have to follow that ordinance. And so while that's not going to prevent anybody per se from being from HSU, as long as they meet those requirements, we can't have them there. But we can definitely reach out and maybe treat them like a community-based organization and include staff from HSU in our updates so that they'll be kept abreast of what's going on. And if they want to provide input, they'll have that opportunity too.
I think that's a great idea, keeping HSU involved. Thank you, City Manager.
All right, well, you all mean Cal Poly Humboldt, right? I just want to mention on that, the President Jackson and 2 of his vice presidents did a presentation at my Rotary meeting last week, and they are very much interested in being very involved in the community. Donated to one of our fundraisers, the Coast Guard dinner, as a matter of fact, that we put on with the city of Eureka. And they are very much want to reach out to as far as they could and recognize the city of Eureka specifically as being inclusive in their scope of services. So they have the Aquatic Center. They have some offices there. They've got the Coral Sea, the ship, and out here in our marina. So I think they're very well connected and would be a good addition to our board as well. Yes, Kimberly.
Hi, I wanted to thank you all for having me here. Yeah. And I am proud to be nominated into this position or appointed into this position. And I have a educational background in criminal justice, but my career has been with the state of California. So I've been a state employee for 21 years. And I've worked within different capacities within our different departments. And my current capacity is a liaison between my department and businesses that are in Humboldt, Del Norte County. So I am boots on the ground, talking to these business owners and finding out what not only their staffing issues are, but also the things that are going on, with break-ins and things that they're having challenges with keeping them afloat as business owners. These small businesses are just, some of them are barely able to make it. And it is due to the rising crime, the broken glass. Those windows cost so much to replace just in itself. So that's why I'm here. I am humbled to be here, and I am glad that I can contribute to this board in a positive manner so that we can hopefully make some accomplishments together. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dino.
All right. Welcome, Kimberly, to this board, and look forward to working with you. And I echo the loss. We're losing quite a bit of experience on our board, but I'm looking forward to just moving forward and seeing who else comes on board. And my comment is on our, just a general format of our agenda. I like having, there's three little sentences that are on our agenda very regularly, and that is our land acknowledgement. And so I am so grateful, and I'm so proud of our city for having our land acknowledgement in our agenda and having it there put there on a regular basis. And I know it's on other citywide agenda items, but I really appreciated this when I want to share a personal story of what happened most recently when we decided to go to Salt Lake City a couple of weeks ago, and from there head up to Yellowstone, and we were able to see the park even after the floods and everything. But we decided, as a family, to go on a tour of the Salt Lake, and so we got on our bus, and on our first turn, the first thing that comes out of our tour guide is this: Brigham Young came into this land and cleared it, cleared this entire area. That was her direct quote. And it just saddened me to hear that, the fact that there wasn't no recognition of the people that were there before. And just this idea of let's just move on to what it is now. And I am so proud of the city, and also of this group, to be able to put that on there and to recognize those who came before us, even as other people, failed to do so in other locations. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward to our police chief's report by Captain Brian Stevens. Welcome, Chief.
Good afternoon, Chair, board members. I believe the agenda calls for a staffing update report to the board, so I'll be happy to give that to you today. And this staffing numbers come out of the 22-23 budget numbers, and I'll run through the entire department, starting with your officers, your sworn personnel, dispatch, and then through the rest of our department. So in this budget year, we're allotted 47 sworn positions minus the chief. Of those positions, currently we have 32 working officers that are solo officers in the field or detectives. That breaks down to 22 sergeants and officers covering patrol currently. One of those is currently on light duty. 4 detectives in our detective bureau, 1 captain, 1 acting captain, 1 CSET sergeant, the waterfront and parks ranger position that is Measure Z funded. Our missed officer position that is Measure Z funded is being filled, but we'll have to pull back due to some staffing issues coming up with some babies being born and the need to cover about 6 weeks of time. Then we currently have 1 sergeant on light duty also. We do have 3 officers that graduated in the last academy on the field training program right now. We're hopeful that their successful completion of that program will be in October, and they'll be solo officers on the street. And we currently have 3 recruits in the current basic police academy that will graduate in December. So you figure 16 weeks after that, so next April, they potentially could be solo officers on the street. We do have 1 recruit in backgrounds currently in the police academy. However, he's still in backgrounds. He put himself into the police academy, and if he's successful, we will hire him at that point that we can. So that leaves us with 9 current positions that we're down for police officer. A couple other hiring opportunities we have. We do have 2 lateral officers in backgrounds right now. One from Kansas. So the city allowed us to fly a position for a permanent detective lateral position. And detective from Wichita, Kansas has applied for that position, is currently in background, and it's moving very well. He does have connections to Humboldt County is the reason he's coming back, so it's not just someone moving here. He does have ties to the community. And we also have 1 officer from North Carolina who also has ties to the community, currently in backgrounds. So the positions we're currently not filling is our Old Town officer position. We're allotted a second waterfront and parks ranger position under our CSAT team, and that's vacant. Our POP team is vacant, which includes a sergeant and 3 detectives. We do have someone selected to return to the Humboldt County Drug Task Force because we pulled that agent back. That role will possibly not be filled until January, just because we need to get the staffing out there. However, they have been working on their days off on overtime to assist the task force, given their short staffing. And then the school resource officer, and we have an officer who's been filling in temporarily for that position, and that is a second position that the city has allowed us to fly as a more or less a permanent school resource officer position, looking to pull in a lateral for that, but unfortunately we've not had anyone successfully apply for that position yet. So that covers our sworn officers. Our dispatch, we're allotted 11 dispatch positions in total. So we have 1 dispatch supervisor, 2 senior dispatchers, and 5 communications dispatchers. So they currently have 3 vacant positions in dispatch. We have 1 vacancy in our community service officer position. Our records section has 2 current vacancies. 1 applicant is currently in the background process, and the only thing she has left is her medical. And then I believe it's next week they begin the process. They've already flown the position again. They begin the testing process next week for trying to fill the second position. We have 2 animal control officer positions. Both of those are vacant. We do have 2 people in backgrounds, and that position's been vacant since May. So that's quite a strain on both the community and patrol and our CSOs trying to handle those animal-related calls. And then we do have 1 retirement likely October, November timeframe, unless that changes, but we've been made aware of that. Some other good news, though, we have purchased a new canine. It'll be a dual-purpose canine. It'll go to Officer Jeremy Solemn. It is back in Chico right now. It came from overseas. He picks it up this Saturday for their, what do they call it? Get to know each other period before they start their 5 weeks of intensive training. His training will be completed by the first week of October, and the dog has been named Yeti. So that is a goal of the department, is to expand our canine team. We're currently fundraising for a second canine that we hope to purchase in January, and our total goal would be to have 3 canines by next summer. So 3 patrol canines, and then we have a specialized narcotics, weapons, and ammunition canine that does detection of those items. So that is our staffing report as it stands in July of 2022. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
What was the name of the canine again?
He settled on Yeti.
Wow. Okay. Well, you'll have to bring him or her to our next meeting and introduce him.
He will be fully trained by then, and be happy to have him come by and say hi.
Absolutely.
We have a picture, I think, on our social media site. It's quite a. It looks like a Yeti. He's got some fur on him. So.
Oh. Okay. Questions
But
for?
can I add a couple things here?
Yes.
So I just want to say, just to put a little positive light on it, it's, I think months ago we were at about 13 officers that were down, and we were looking at approximately 2 to 3 officers that were looking to go to another agency. We worked really hard together as a team with the employees for the city at EPD and management to do a lot of things to retain and try and prevent people from leaving. I think that was effective in doing that. Take-home vehicles were very well received, and I think that hopefully was influential in some of those people that were going to leave not leaving. I'd also like to say that, we've done better over the last few months than we were in the position prior to that. Being down 9, while it sounds is bad and not good, and we've always had issues with maintaining staffing levels at EPD, we're moving in the right direction. And I'd also like to say that the city doesn't allow EPD. We work with EPD to find the best possible solutions for recruitment and staffing levels, and I think that some of those things that I spoke about were the result of those discussions that we've had with our city staff at EPD to try and make sure that we find the best possible way to get people to want to stay here and also want to come here. And we've also worked with Eddie Alexander currently on a big social media effort to target certain areas within not only California but outside of California, and we're putting a lot of effort into that to make sure that we demonstrate the benefits of Northern California and the quality of life that we have here to attract more officers here.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if that big full-page fancy ad in the PORAC magazine had anything to do with attracting the officers from other states.
In our conversations with those that have applied, it has not been from the PORAC magazine.
Oh.
Unfortunately.
Wow.
So
it's a beautiful
there's
ad.
other marketing opportunities out there that they're taking advantage of to learn about positions here in the city.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Any other questions for... Go ahead, Dino.
My question is, I know the department was offering incentives. How has that been going? It's been working, or has people been requesting them?
Yeah, so the incentives that the department and the city agreed upon, like the city manager spoke about, have been very well received within the department. We're shortly going to begin the take-home vehicle process. So officers that are on duty for their 4 or 3 day week will have a vehicle assigned to them that they can drive to and from. This will help both with response times for critical incidents when we have those officers that have vehicles. Plus, it's just an incentive to them. It increases the visibility of police cars in both city neighborhoods and traveling throughout the city to the county neighborhoods where they live. So there's a lot of benefits come out of that, but mainly for the officers, it's a benefit. We have the city and the EPOA agreed on a membership to Precision Ballistic, where officers can go and train, and that's been hugely appreciated by the members of the department to get to utilize those services. And there are other benefits that came from the city with Zoom memberships free for you and your family. The daycare situation has always been crucial to retaining people here. The free daycare and others that are coming and have come. So morale within the department related to those types of incentives has been very well received, and we're definitely moving in the right direction. And we're very appreciative of the collaboration with the city and our union and management of the department to come about with those changes.
That's great. I love hearing that.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, how does the daycare, maybe you could answer that. Well, how does the daycare incentive work? Is that an actual place, or is it a monetary? Can you explain?
Yeah. The daycare is called Little Saplings. It's a city-run facility. It's actually its own daycare that it's not a voucher that we hand out to people, but rather we provide the site and the staffing. And previously it was a discounted rate for children of employees who are attending. Just at the beginning of this month, we made that a free benefit to employees. And Shannon Fazio, she has been instrumental in overseeing that function of the city's operations and kind of getting it from the ground up. It's really unique. It's relatively new in terms of an operation, but it's been a pretty critical community benefit. over the course of the pandemic, we saw a reduction in that service in our local area, where we lost about 50% of all the daycares around here for a period of time. They're slowly building back, but through that, Little Saplings continued to run, and really, it's been very well received. It's a very highly respected site. There's a major wait list to get in there, and that's just because of our wonderful staff that we have there. And so as a community asset, it's huge, but also for recruitment and retention, it's major. You know, not only is it critically needed for a lot of people out there seeking jobs, but also it's quite expensive to go and pay for that on your own, and that the city is able to operate such a site and provide it to employees has been huge.
That's wonderful.
I agree that that's a huge benefit, and I appreciate knowing that information. Now, the people that are on the wait list, how long does it take for them to get actual placement, and can they get a monetary benefit while they're waiting, or how does that work?
How long the wait list is, I might pitch that one over to Shannon, but we don't have, it's not a cash benefit. And right now what I can say is that the city is in the process of pursuing expansion of that site. So that's including an additional classroom. There's been an application submitted to the state. This is a state certified operation that we have. And so in order to do that, again, it's a staffing issue. We're currently recruiting for preschool teacher. That's a newly created classification that's replacing our preschool aide position. Once that happens, there will likely be in the near future an expansion of that operation that will provide for additional slots, not just for city employees, but also for the community.
Okay. Shannon, did you want to add something?
So I can't tell you exactly how long it would take for somebody to get off the wait list. We do have a big turnover that we're going to have happen with our current enrollees, because a lot of them are going to be moving on to kindergarten in the fall, and so that's going to free up several spots. And then, as Will mentioned, the addition of opening the classroom, we have to get that approved with the state, but that's going to allow us to increase the capacity as well, which will hopefully accommodate more families. And as Will also mentioned, it is open to both the public and our city employees. And so we have enrollment coming from both sides, but it is free for city employees. Yeah.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you.
And if I can, I'll just, since the captain brought it up, I'll just make a couple other quick plugs about stuff that the city is doing right now that's pretty unique to the city of Eureka, which is, as he mentioned, the free Zoo membership for city employees. That has been incredibly well received. A preschool run by the city. Nowhere else is doing that. So that's a really big deal for us, and our ability to retain locally, and focusing on retention is a big deal right now. But with police specifically, lots of good new benefits for them that, again, are unique to the city of Eureka. He pointed out one, which is the range, ballistic precision, the city paying for that membership for folks. That's something that I've heard about just anecdotally from folks I know who work at other jurisdictions, and how that's like really cool. Wow. Well, okay. Submit an application then. But the other is the shift differential that we've begun doing shift differential for folks working on their night shifts, but that we've applied that in some capacity to folks who are getting called out for court appearances that fall during their normal days off. Lots of folks work over the weekends. Courts closed on weekends. They take their weekend during the week, but then they're called out, and a lot of times those will be canceled, and so they'll have not been able to make plans because they're expecting to have to appear in court on their regularly scheduled day off. Well, we've kind of made it so that those people are taken care of in as much as we're able to with shift differential pay. So if they are called off, that they just get some overtime for that inconvenience, even if they don't end up ultimately having to show up. And that's, again, unique to the city of Eureka. So I just wanted to throw that out there so you could see kind of the stuff that we're trying to do that's different, that addresses directly the concerns we're hearing from staff down there. And so far, as the captain has mentioned, it's been well received, and there appears to be a boost in morale after some of this work that we've done. So thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you. Captain Stevens, thank you for your presentation, and I appreciate and glad to see the efforts of the city and everyone here for recruitment and retention. I do have a question for our independent police auditor. I wonder if him and his team could comment on the staffing issues police are facing and where they're seeing problems that result as that. You know, is there research that shows with low staffing that there are more incidences, critical incidences? You know, is there any advice on how to deal with low staffing? I'd just be interested to hear what our independent police auditor team has to add to this discussion.
Of course, I'd be happy to talk to you about what we're seeing throughout the state of California and even beyond. And that is every agency that I'm familiar with has had challenges in staffing over the past 2 or 3 years. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. Certainly the George Floyd murder, the protests, and some of the offshoots of that, the defunding the policing movement that, you know, some cities have entertained, and the milieu and the increased attention on policing has certainly created some pressure points with regard to those who are in the profession or those who may have otherwise wanted to get into the profession. So there's that going on until recently, and even through the pandemic. Employment has been good throughout the nation. Whenever that is true, then policing does suffer because there are other options for individuals who might want to become a police officer. They might, you know, go into other professions, particularly if the unemployment rate is low. And then, as the captain indicated, one of the strategies, most effective strategies to dealing with employment issues involving police officers is to retain those that you have. So long as they are continuing to function effectively as a police officer, so much better to keep those folks in the department rather than having to spend time, money, training, and expenses to get folks through the application process, which needs to be rigid, needs to be robust, so that only the best people and the qualified people enter into the profession. Because once you get them, you want to keep them for at least 20 years, ideally. That's another aspect of some of the challenges with the policing profession that probably haven't caught up to the interests of Generation X, Y, Z. I can't remember what generation we're in right now, but what I'm saying is that traditionally policing, the reward, the financial reward and incentive in policing has traditionally been at the back end, not at the front end. So what I mean by that is that most police departments, most cities have a very generous program for police officers, which allow them to retire at a very high rate of their salary after 20 years of service, after they become 50. And so police officers are able to retire earlier than most of us, and get benefits and get health benefits after they retire, which is all great and rewarding, and traditionally has been an extreme incentive for police officers who are in the profession. The disconnect is that I believe that if you poll, and I've looked at polls and looked at some, you know, psychological, sociological studies, and that is younger people are not interested as much in doing anything for 20 years as a career. They're viewing occupations is to view it as sort of serial jobs and serial professions along the way. And so therefore the traditional incentives that police officers are provided at the end of the tenure isn't as attractive to a younger person who is thinking, I might want to try this for 3 or 4 years, and I'm going to try something else, and then I'm going to go on to a third thing and maybe a fourth thing, but I'm not going to get locked into a profession where I'm stuck. And so that sort of runs counter to the incentives that are traditionally provided police officers, which is the generous retirement and other benefits that they accrue at the end of the career.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Okay, Captain, do you have any other comments or anything you'd like to add?
Not today. Thank you for your time.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, we'll move on to staff reports then. This is where we're going to have a presentation and a discussion of the recently adopted City of Eureka's policy and procedure regarding city-owned security cameras. And I think City Manager Miles, were you going to make that presentation?
I definitely can.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of it. So I'm sure that everybody is aware of what's been going on at the City of Eureka. You know, we, just to start off the basic history of how we got where we're at. So because of some of the staffing issues that we were seeing at EPD, we were looking at alternative ways to reduce calls for service, address problem areas, those type of things. So approximately a year ago, we did a 6-month trial of Lot Cop, which is a mobile security camera that can be placed in different locations, and when issues arise can be looked at to try and address and follow up with some of those situations. And so I believe we got 2 separate mobile units, tried them out for 6 months. We worked them both on public and private property for a very long period. For those 6 months. We saw really good results, especially on some of our problem areas, and as well as some private locations that were having issues with vandalism and break-ins and those type of things. And so after that, we went and looked into what the cost would be in order to purchase some of these units, both stationary as well as a mobile unit. And so we went ahead and did that, and we purchased 5 stationary units and 1 mobile unit. We're looking at locations to put them in. We install them in certain locations. Throughout that process, we knew that we needed to get a policy in place. And so we worked with the chief and our city attorney to develop a security camera policy for those security cameras that are in public spaces. And so we took that to council approximately a month ago, and then received feedback on that, brought it back, and then it was adopted by council. It basically puts in the parameters as to what they'll be used for. I think one of the biggest concerns that we heard from the public was the surveillance concern. And I know there are communities, Beverly Hills being one, where they spend significant amount of staff time of paying staff to sit and monitor cameras that they have in public spaces. That is not what we're doing with these. They are used more for security purposes and oversight purposes for follow-ups on vandalism and crime and those type of things. And as the chief is here, he would tell you they've used these in San Diego, and they've actually been able to exonerate people by having these in place as well. And so we put the policy together, went through a couple of meetings with council, and it was adopted by council at our, I think it was 2 meetings ago. And so we had a request from members of the COP board to bring it for discussion here. And so if there's any questions about where we're at with that or where we're at with the units currently, I'm available to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Pardo suggested that we bring this to the board for any discussion, knowing that it's already been adopted, however. But if you need some clarification, understanding, please ask the question. Dr. Pardo, did you have any comments?
No, as you said, Chairperson, it has been adopted. And certainly it sounded like there was robust discussion at the council and the city manager and the public. I think that it shows the process. It's a good process. A couple questions for the city manager. From a budget standpoint, does this fall under the police budget? You know, how was these financed? I'd be interested to hear that. It sounds like it's not, as you say, a surveillance tool, but going back in time tool. And I have another question after those first two questions.
Okay. So knowing that these were coming in, we could have put the line item anywhere because Public Works will be utilizing these, and same with community services, depending on the location. But the funding to fund these is coming out of the budget. It's not reducing police's budget in any way. It was an additional allocation. The funding for it is about $60,000 a year for all of the units. And the upfront cost was really nominal. It was about $20,000 a year. I mean, $20,000 one-time cost for all the poles and those type of things, which we own now. So it while it resides in EPD's budget, it's not something that took away from their budget.
Okay.
And who's reviewing these videos? Is there a specific person? Is there a team? Who's allowed to sort of view these videos, and what is sort of the indication to go back and look at them?
So it's very limited. It'll typically be done either through calls for service or complaints after the fact. So let's say the one by the Wharfinger, we'll have staff come by and there'll be deck boards torn up, or there'll be a fire on the deck that has burned the deck or something like that. So in that case, it would be community services director that would have access to the film, and of course EPD. It'll be a limited number of folks that are designated by the city manager to view it. It won't be open to all staff in any way, shape, or form. There may be some exceptions, but for the most part, it will be Public Works Director, Community Services Director, Police Chief, Captain, higher level positions within each department, that whatever the issue is.
And then last question. Like body-worn cameras, I assume these are going to be in high crime areas, so if there is police activity caught on these mobile or in-place cameras, what's the approach to that? Is that reviewed and saved? If there's an incident that happens, what's the plan to deal with that with these cameras? How does that fit into all this video recording that's going on with policing these days?
So we would use it similar to a body cam. So if, for some reason the body cam wasn't working and we need to use it as a backup or provided a better angle, it'd be used as a part of an investigation or part of an internal affairs thing. It'll be used similarly as we do to the body cam.
Great. And then the last questions for independent police auditor. Just wanted his input and the team's input on security cameras and if they've seen any issues with them.
Security cameras can be an asset with regard to detecting crimes that have already occurred, and certainly agree that they can be a great way to enhance the eyes and ears of the police officers who are out on patrol. But they do have to come with a policy that provides guidance to individuals on the questions you're asking, like who gets access, how are the camera footage going to be maintained, which ones are tagged for preservation. If there's a crime report behind it, obviously that would happen. And so I think that that guidance is really critical, and I appreciate hearing that a policy was adopted that sort of sets out the ground rules for the use of this tool.
Great, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Dino?
Yeah, so it's nice to hear that these cameras are being purchased or have been purchased, and because it sounds like even in previous meetings that we've had that it's had reduced crime wherever these during that 6-month time period wherever these cameras were located. Do we have an idea as to where these cameras are going to be put at? With the 5 station area, I'm just wondering if what's the plan? Do you guys have places in mind for those, or you just can't say, or I don't know?
No, we do.
Okay.
We do, and one of the things that changed in the security camera policy was to sign and notice people that they are there is a security camera in place. One of the locations is kind of by the Wharfinger at Dock B, which will have coverage of the Wharfinger. So it's on Marina Way. Dock B is the old dock that used to do our commercial crabbing off of. That's now a defunct dock. That's one location. Another location is Truesdale Vista Point at the foot of Truesdale. Another location is the Herrick parking lot by the wastewater treatment plant along the trail. Another location is the high tank by our new fueling facility there. That's more of a security purpose for that. And I think that was 4. And the 5th one's going to be by the restrooms at the gazebo. And then the mobile one has been put in different locations. I believe that it still currently is at the parking lot, the public parking lot on 1st and C Street, next to the inn at 2nd and C, because of some of the issues that we've had at that location. And I believe it's been proven effective to help out with some of the problems that we've had in the last couple of weeks, well, month or two in that location. But that one will be moved around based on the need. I do know that when we got ours, Winco was very interested, and Winco purchased one, and they have one in their parking lot.
I've got a quick question. Is there any signage on these, like as a deterrence, you're being surveilled by video or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know the exact verbiage, but yes, once we get them up and they're running, there will be signage. That was one of the things that came out of the initial introduction of the policy. That was requested by council, is to include signage in those locations. And the mobile one, we'll probably put a sign on it, but it's pretty, I don't know if you've seen them before, but it's pretty apparent that they're there. It's a very large
I have
box
seen the mobile one, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Kim.
So the time frame on keeping those video records, what's the time frame on that? And who's maintaining the records? Is it a third-party company or the county or the city itself?
It's a cloud-based system. Third-party company does it. We get access to it through the third-party company. Right now, the security cam policy is 90 days, unless, as Michael had said, it's a part of a case that would be held longer for that.
Okay. And my last question was, when you, I'm sorry, I totally blanked out. Go ahead.
That's okay. Any other questions?
I have another question.
Go ahead, do you know?
Yeah, so just looking at the locations where they're planning on putting those, it seems like a lot of the issues that I'm hearing is right along the waterfront. Is what I'm hearing, is that where majority of the calls are coming from? Is that where a lot of the issues with policing is coming from? I'm just wondering, why is it that most of the spots for these cameras are along the waterfront?
It's a combination of both. It's calls for service, which when we put these in those locations when we were using the mobile, significantly reduced those. But it's also high vandalism areas where we get a lot of vandalism or illegal dumping or those type of things. And typically along our waterfront, it's been that way for a very long time, where we've had a lot of illegal dumping and other issues along there. I would say it's also the area where the city owns the most property. You know, other than our parks and buildings, the majority of the property that the city owns is along our waterfront.
Okay, so I remembered my question.
Okay, Kim.
So I just want to clarify this for maybe the public too. These surveillance cameras, they're security cameras, they're not surveillance, right? So you're not going to have someone sitting watching these videos looking for crime or criminal acts. You're going to actually review them after a report of a crime has been committed. Is that kind of the reason for it?
Correct. I mean, there could be a possibility. So let's say the one at the gazebo, that there's an active shooter. I don't know. There could be some critical incident going on at that time, and if that was to happen, they could likely utilize this as a tool to help address that situation. But no, we are not paying staff to sit and watch these at any point in time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I should ask if there's any member of the public that would like to address this issue with the board. Seeing none? Great, we'll move on. Thank you very much, City Manager Slattery.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we've come to our adjournment. So our next meeting is on Tuesday, October 25th, 2022 at 3:30 p.m. And I look forward to getting together with the independent auditor and working out some logistics and with you, city manager and staff, to talk about what kind of items we want to place on the next agenda. And if any of the board members have thoughts or ideas, you can always send them to me, and for consideration, we'll agendize them either immediately or at a later date. We'll have to decide as a group of how to address those, okay? All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to Michael Janako.
Oh, you had it right the first time.
Oh, I had it right the first time. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. And thank you to all the staff members and public who joined us today. We'll see you in October. Boom, we're adjourned.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.